What is a game reviewer even supposed to be? I keep asking that because half these people act like they were appointed by some digital priesthood to descend from the mountain and explain fun to the peasants. You open a review hoping for a useful read, and what you get is a grown adult performing a personality test on a menu screen while pretending it is consumer advice. Then they wonder why players roll their eyes so hard they almost unlock a new frame rate. A reviewer is supposed to do a few basic things well. They should tell you how the game runs. They should explain what the systems feel like. They should give you a sense of whether your money and time are about to be respected or mugged in an alley. They should also understand that their score is not floating in a vacuum. Publishers see it, investors see it, and aggregates blast it through the internet like gospel. Regular players see that giant number first and the details second, which means the number better come from some standard, beyond one reviewer waking up grumpy after bad coffee. That is the first joke. These people love acting like they are above the crowd, while cashing in on the crowd's attention. They talk like fearless critics standing against hype, but the second a fashionable studio drops a shiny trailer, they fold faster than a lawn chair. Suddenly, rough mechanics become ambitious. Thin content becomes focused. Terrible onboarding becomes refreshingly hands-off. Broken balance becomes demanding. A bad control scheme becomes something you eventually learn to appreciate. That is not analysis, that is a hostage letter, written by someone who wants early access next time. Meanwhile, the wrong developer shows up and the whole tone changes. Now every rough edge is a moral failure. Every bug is a sign of collapse. Every frustrating system means the creators clearly hate the player. Nothing gets interpreted with generosity, nothing gets framed as potential, and nothing earns patience. The same reviewer, who spent 2,000 words defending inconvenience as artistic intention, suddenly starts slamming the desk because a tutorial did not hold their hand and kiss their forehead. Players notice that. Gamers spend hours learning systems, memorizing maps, testing builds, comparing settings, and reading patch notes. They argue over tiny mechanical differences that would make normal people leave the room. You really think that audience cannot spot inconsistent standards? You think the same people, who can tell when one weapon got secretly nerfed by 3%, are not going to notice a reviewer excusing one game for the exact same sins they used to bury another? Come on. The audience is not stupid. The audience is just tired of being talked to like they are. And that is what annoys me most. Bias is normal and taste is normal. Nobody expects a reviewer to become a floating orb of perfect objectivity. Every human being has preferences. The problem starts when taste puts on a tie, grabs a clipboard, and starts issuing verdicts like it was handed down from a lab. That is when players get annoyed, because they are being asked to treat a mood swing like a measurement. A lot of reviewers do not actually review games. They review the story they want to tell about themselves for liking or disliking a game. The article becomes a costume, and the score becomes social signaling. The whole piece reads like a guy auditioning for approval from other reviewers, other creators, and that online class of people who think having the correct opinion about entertainment makes them morally aerodynamic. You can almost hear the invisible audience they are trying to impress. Not players, never players, but other people with badges. That is why so many reviews feel detached from the actual experience of buying and playing games. Regular people are not asking for a sermon. They want to know if the thing is fun, if it works, how long it takes to get good, whether the rough parts are worth fighting through, and if the launch version is going to waste their weekend. Instead, they get a personal essay from somebody who seems offended that the product did not align with the mythology in their head. And let me say something rude. A lot of reviewers are addicted to being the smartest person in the room, even when the room is full of players who know more than they do. That is why they get defensive whenever the audience pushes back. The second gamers disagree, the reviewer starts speaking in that smug, parental tone, like the public simply lacks the refined palate required to appreciate their superior reading of events. Brother, you played a game for review code, wrote 12 paragraphs about your feelings, and slapped a number on it. You did not crack an ancient manuscript. Relax. The funniest part is how often these people confuse familiarity with expertise. Playing a lot of games does not automatically make someone wise. Sometimes it just makes them burnt out and snobby. You can feel it in the writing. They are bored before the tutorial ends. They resent learning new systems. They punish anything that does not instantly flatter their habits. Then they reward recycled design, because it slides down easy and lets them meet embargo without having to think too hard. Same sandwich, different lie. Timing makes this worse. A reviewer will rush through one game at launch, while servers are melting, patches are still landing, and balance is swinging around drunk. Everyone is basically fighting through chaos. Then another game gets the luxury of time, extra days, more hours, post-launch fixes, community discoveries, and better context. Guess which one gets judged as a complete work, and which one gets sentenced during open heart surgery. Then the outlet acts shocked when people accuse them of favoritism. It is pattern recognition. And before somebody says scores are just opinions, spare me. A score from a giant outlet is not just an opinion anymore, it is a market signal with branding. It affects conversation, discoverability, investor confidence, social media framing, and whether normal buyers approach a game with curiosity or suspicion. Once your number starts moving money and shaping public mood, you do not get to hide behind the humble shield of just my take. That excuse would maybe work if you were yelling into a webcam with 17 viewers and a cheap mic that sounds like you are calling from a submarine. It does not work when your logo can tilt the room. The institution is part of the problem. Big outlets love the image of authority, but hate the responsibility that comes with it. They want the reach, the trust, the influence, the embargo access, the panel invites, the quote on the trailer, and the power to shape a launch narrative. Then, when players ask for consistent standards, suddenly everybody becomes a philosopher and starts mumbling about the impossibility of objectivity. Funny how that speech only appears after a score gets roasted. Here is the blunt truth. Most players do not hate critics because critics are negative. Players hate critics when the standards feel fake. Gamers can handle bad news. They can handle tough reviews. They can even handle somebody trashing a game they personally loved. What they cannot stand is the sneaky little shuffle, where one title gets patience, another gets contempt, one studio gets context, and another gets mockery, while the whole thing is packaged as neutral expertise. That is the insult. Not disagreement, but the performance of fairness. And review culture keeps getting worse, because the incentives are rotten. Outrage spreads faster than nuance. Prestige bias flatters the right audiences. Access journalism hangs over everything like bad weather. Nobody wants to be the reviewer who gets labeled unserious by peers, so they all start drifting toward the same polished little set of acceptable reactions. That is why so many outlets somehow sound different and identical at the same time. Different wording, same posture. Nobody is leading, everybody is checking the room before speaking. The result is a review ecosystem that feels less like criticism and more like airport security for taste. Certain games get waved through because they look respectable. Certain genres get treated like a suspicious bag left under a bench. Some mechanics are praised as hardcore when the cool crowd likes them, and condemned as annoying when the wrong audience does. If players sound cynical, it is because they have watched this circus for years. They know who gets the benefit of the doubt, and they know who gets frisked. That is why more people trust long player impressions, community breakdowns, and post-launch discussion than the old review machine. At least the average player usually admits what they like. They tell you where they bounced off. They explain their tolerance for grind, jank, challenge, repetition, or weird systems. That honesty goes a long way. A reviewer who tells me this style is not for me, but here is who might love it, is already doing better work than somebody pretending their personal boredom is a universal law of nature. Game reviewers also have this charming habit of acting like players are emotional while they are rational, which is hilarious, because half of review writing is emotional camouflage. They feel irritated, impressed, nostalgic, alienated, validated, or left out, then backfill those feelings with fancy language so the conclusion looks earned. Again, that is human. Fine, just do not act like the audience is uniquely compromised, because they actually paid for the game instead of receiving a code and a deadline. What gets lost in all this is the simple fact that players keep the whole industry alive. Not critics, not outlet badges, and not aggregate numbers. Players buy the games, stick with the patches, build communities, test the systems, and make guides. They keep servers populated, drag dead games back to life, and give developers the feedback that actually matters after launch. Reviewers can be useful guides, but they are still middlemen. The second they forget that, they start talking like landlords. So no, I do not think all reviewers are evil. I think a lot of them are inconsistent, institutionally protected, self-important, and far too comfortable presenting taste as law. That combination is enough to poison trust. Once players start assuming the score depends on the studio, the genre, the social prestige, and the reviewer's mood more than the actual experience, the whole model falls apart. Then reviews stop being guidance and become theater. Maybe that is the real roast here. Game reviewers keep asking why players do not respect them the way they used to. Look in the mirror. Respect did not disappear because gamers became barbarians. Respect disappeared because too many reviewers spent years talking down to the audience, while failing the most basic test. Apply the same energy to everybody. If a game is rough, call it rough. If roughness can be redeemed by payoff, say that clearly. If your taste is driving the verdict, admit it like an adult. Stop hiding preference behind institutional fog and then acting offended when players notice the silhouette. Seeing that pattern changes how you read every review after that. The score looks smaller. The badge looks weaker. The tone starts giving away more than the text ever intended. That is not a bad thing, it just means the spell is broken. Once you understand that, you stop treating reviewers like judges and start treating them like weather reports. Useful sometimes, wrong often, and dramatic when a little pressure hits the map. And honestly, that is healthier for everyone. Players get their judgment back. Reviewers lose a little fake authority. Games get discussed with more honesty. The audience stops begging for permission to enjoy something imperfect. That matters because a lot of games are messy, a lot of polished games are dead inside, and a lot of reviewers still cannot tell the difference unless somebody explained it to them first.